Ladies and gentlemen, we might have just witnessed one of the greatest non-Grandmaster chess matches of all time. Ludwig, Sardoche meeting in the semi-final of PogChamps. Let's just jump right into the games. I've got nothing else to say. This was a high-level chess fight. Lud, about 1100. Sardoche, more experienced, about 1400. Does tend to get a little bit nervous and unsure of himself. But Ludwig, the faster player, and recently added some openings to his toolbox. So, he kicks things off. Sardoche plays d4, f5, and bishop f4, knight f6. So, what do we have? We've got a London system being played into the Dutch defense. Ludwig was anticipating the London. He plays knight f6. We get e3, e6, bishop back to g3. Now, of course, knight f3 here is a very natural developing move, but bishop back to g3, and Lud plays b6. So I actually love this. It's the Dutch defense with the bishop out on b7. This is the exact setup that I recommend in my openings course, e6, b6. I'm not saying he has it. I'm just saying that he came prepared with this. It's a great system. So bishop to b7. We get knight to f3. Black develops with bishop to d6, and now Sardoche plays bishop d3. At this point, this trade doesn't really matter for Ludwig if he doubles his pawns, but on the contrary, he should continue developing here and probably castle. I'm not a huge fan of him playing bishop takes g3 because that opens up this rook. And now that you've opened up my rook, castling into this territory is very dangerous. And here, Sardoche has the first advanced concept of the day. He doesn't just blindly castle as well. He goes, wait a minute, I got this. Let me go queen to e2. And then, let me castle long, adapting to what's going on in the opening here. He castles long. So what has he got? He's got the open file. He's got two pawn break situations. And he's going to activate his pieces and go down this way. So Ludwig plops that knight directly into the middle of the board. And oh, Sardoche plays, what a move. A computer move. Rook to h4, targeting that knight. Ludwig locks it in. Now we get rook to h1, doubling up on that h7 pawn. So Ludwig responds with h6. That pawn moved up one square. And now this square is free real estate. So immediately he transfers the knight to e5. Very high level play here. Ludwig already on the ropes. He responds with queen to g5. A little bit aggressive for my liking. At this point, what Ludwig calculated to get to queen g5 was as follows. He drew this, 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 and he said, oh, I take with check. And let me just show that. What he was looking at was rook h5, knight g3, takes check, and then that's what made him play this. But he made a mistake. He calculated in a way where he proves himself right. He didn't ask, wait a minute, does white have to do any of that? White doesn't have to take the queen. White can just take back. So there was a small flaw in his calculation because he proved himself right rather than proving himself wrong. He had to find what was wrong with his idea. Now, having said that, Sardoche just played rook to h3, which is a little bit slow of a move. A little bit slow, trying to defend everything. Now we get knight to c6, but that knight used to defend the d7 square. And Sardoche just says, oh, booyah, rook h5, queen f6, knight d7. Of course, you say, well, Ludwig should have went back to d8. Yes, but that's hard to see. He had to go all the way back, abandoning post. He tried to stay more active. He blunders the fork, and now he's down material. Now, at this point, what do you do if you're Sardoche? Knight to f1, not a bad move. I want him to be a little bit more active, a little bit more aggressive. I don't hate knight f1. Now we get knight b4. Beautiful. Ludwig trying to create counterplay on the queen side. Targets the a2 pawn and d3. Sardoche plays f3, hitting the knight. And at this point, Ludwig takes the bishop with check. But ladies and gentlemen, Ludwig is winning here. That is why you always look for checks. Knight takes d3 is one option. But he's also threatening knight a2. And what he might have forgotten is that when the king goes to b1, it hits the knight. And this knight is hanging. But there is another check. Knight c3 would have been a fork, sacrificing both knights for the queen. Absolutely worth it. Two horses are worth a queen. Trust me. And even if the king goes to d1, it doesn't matter. It's a forced loss. It is the most obscure tactical sequence ever. But that is why you always look for checks. Knight a2, he had it, but he blitzes out this, and he backs up with the knight. Not bad, but he was winning. He had a chance. So we get rook up to h4. Now we get bishop to h6. Another beautiful move from Ludwig. Activating his most passive piece, direct line of sight on that pawn. f4. We get f4. And now Ludwig goes back to h7. He actually could have utilized this and went directly here. Utilizing that pin with pressure on everything. Instead, he goes back, we get g4 takes, and now rook g4. And queen takes d3. You say, wait a minute, that's a free rook. No, it's not. Always look for checks. If we were in the consolation bracket, one of the players might have blundered into this. Ludwig notices that there's a check. He would have lost the queen. His king would have been wide open. He doesn't do that. He goes queen takes d3, utilizing that bishop that he just moved. Take, take. The knight is hanging. And, ladies and gentlemen, the worst part, that when you move the knight, black has this. Black has a fork. Uh-oh. The best thing was to move the rook out of the line of sight of the knight and defend. But Ludwig is now up. He is up a pawn. Here we go. How does Sardoche recover from being winning earlier? King to h7. He plays king d2. He says, it's the endgame. What's important in the endgame? Material, piece activity, and the king. The king, it's time to get the king involved. Go. Rook e5. Beautiful centralization, pressuring one of his weaknesses. Active pieces, target the weakness, activate the king. Ludwig plays bishop to e8, controlling the entire entrance diagonal. King to b4, he continues. Now, at this point, Ludwig has to go, what's weak in white's position? Rook g6. If he had found rook g6, he would have infiltrated and won everything. And then he would have promoted his pawn. But Ludwig played the move g6, very solid, and now we get a4, we get h5, good play from Ludwig, I don't hate it, a5. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is not checkers. You should know that by now. The channel's called GothamChess. Look at this board, they're all chess pieces. I have like 300 videos out, it's all about chess. It is not checkers. In checkers, if you can take, you must, don't take. There is no need to do this. All it does is allow white to infiltrate further. The best thing at this point would have been to play a5 check, because now the white king has no entrance. It's repelled. You repel it from entry, and then you proceed with your game plan. If the white king defends the pawn, you proceed with playing on this side of the board. You activate your king, you mobilize your forces. Still, white is doing a very good job. And what's important, in bishop versus knight endgames, the pawn structure. Because almost all of white's pawns are on the dark squares, the light squared bishop has no role. And because the pawns are on the same color square as the bishop, you are constantly playing passive. Your bishop is stuck behind your own pawns. So even for the cost of one pawn, black is doing a really, not great job repelling white's forces. White is up a pawn, white is down a pawn, but white is a lot more active. And especially white is more active if you let him do this. The king becomes the hero, h4, but the knight just drops back. Lud's got nowhere to go. He plays rook f5, but he blunders the pawn on e6, which, by the way, did not get taken. Rook takes, d takes, now king h6. At this point, the only thing remaining for Ludwig is to get active. Stop the knight from moving. If the king takes, you get active. Hit the knight. You know why you hit the knight? The weakness. The only pawn in the position on a light square. The same color as your bishop. Get in. And once you take, it's over. Bang, bang, bang. Notice these things. The game gets this late. It's move 40. You need a second win. Don't just give up. Don't be like, oh, I already did my job. I don't need to focus anymore. The game is not over until a little thing pops up and says you won, you lost, or it's a draw. I don't want to hear none of that nonsense. The game is never over. Keep on fighting. Keep on pushing. Get active. At this point, both players low on time. The play starts getting a little bit inaccurate. Ludwig mobilizes, but the king is coming. The king just comes right back. His pawns aren't going anywhere. He never activated his bishop. His bishop is locked in by its own pawns. There's no entrance points. And he plays king h5. Now we get a blunder from Sardoche. He plays e4. Not necessary. Just infiltrate with the king. But low time, plays e4. Ludwig, don't even take. Don't even think. Just take. King c4, push it. Activate the bishop. Let's go. Bring in the king. Bring in the king. Trade down the pawn. Activate the king. But Ludwig plays here. Passive. Stuck behind the pawns. Sardoche doesn't need a second chance. King d6. e6. He could have been a tiny bit cleaner here. Could have pushed the f pawn as well. But he takes the pawn. He pushes. Locks the bishop down to the passive nature. And watch this. He realizes that he doesn't have to rush. It's not about the pawn. It's about the rest of the position. He plays knight d5 check. Drops back to defend. To hit c4. The bishop defends. And this. The knight twirls to win the h4 pawn. And that's all he needs. He's got a second pawn. Let's go. He makes the queen. And now he's not even worried about taking the piece because he doesn't want a stalemate with the bishop on the board. Black will always have moves. The bishop can only cover 32 of the squares and they're light squares. So he wins this game on the dark squares. Sardoche strikes first. That was a 91% played game by him. He made one slip up with the fork, then he overcame from the blunder. This is what we came for. This is PogChamps 3. I'm telling y'all, these were some crazy, crazy games. Game number 2. Lud Skywalker with the white pieces. E4, we know we're going to get from Sardoche's the Sicilian defense. And C3. And you know why he played C3? Because the last video that GothamChess posted was called the Alpine Sicilian. I'm just kidding. He probably didn't even see it. But his coach, Robert Hess, I think is a big fan of this. C3 trying to play D4. The problem, you're playing a damn good chess player. He knows what's up. We get E5, knight D5. Go watch the Alpine Sicilian video. D4 takes. Now at this point, you're supposed to go knight F3. Ludwig plays CD4. Sardoche plays D6. And now knight F3. Okay, slightly different than what we're used to. Knight C6, bishop B5. Incorrect. Incorrect handling of the opening, but now we're completely on our own. The bishop is supposed to go to C4. So we get A6 takes, Queen A4, by the way. Super tricky move, which is just very funny. Because if pawn takes, you take the rook. But it's actually might even be the best move. So we get bishop D7. Don't get too creative. This is the problem when you start inventing early on. Know your openings, especially at this level. 800s, 300s, 100s, 40, you're off the hook. But the rest of y'all gotta learn your stuff. See, white is now playing a few moves again. Knight C7, a very fancy move, dropping the knight back. And here, Sardoche plays a bad move. So he takes. No. He needs to keep improving his position. This just kills one of his most powerful pieces and gives him a weakness. At this point, Sardoche should close the center. But what he plays is rook B8. Now at this point, Lud's got to be thinking, I'm castled and ready to go. He's not. Shred open the center of the board. Bang. If queen takes, bang. 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 Let's go. But he plays bishop to F4 first. Fine. E6, rook D1. I'm not thrilled about that move, but it's not bad because he's anticipating take. So I'm cool with it, but now the center gets closed. A3, bishop E7, and here, oh, just a beautiful move. Beautiful move. Queen G3. And Ludwig said, if he castles, which he will, I'm gonna go here, and then I'm gonna do this. That's a good idea. Black does have knight E8, but it's tough to see that. Yes. But here Sardoche played B5. Ludwig had mentally prepared the fact that black was going to castle here. That's what he had mentally prepared. And he forgot that G7 was hanging. Queen takes is just a free pawn. Sometimes we do that. We expect a move, and then we forget our actual initial threat. Queen G7 is just winning. Winning on the spot. Rook F8, Queen H7, just up 2 pawns. Bishop H6, it's coming in, it's over. But he misses a second chance. Plays B4, not a bad move. But now Sardoche plays G5. Look at that. And F5, look at that. Now, at this point, it's ironic because you're playing a French guy. You forget about en passant. Like, en passant, you have to play that. If it's a good move. A lot of you beginners, hey, listen up. A lot of you beginners do that. Just because you can, you do it. Because you're like, oh, look at me, I'm so fancy. No, in this case, it's really good. Because this is now open, the E file is open, these are weaknesses. But he forgets. He forgets and he plays F4 himself. Now Sardoche plays H6. Now it's not clear what the heck is going on, because black is about to open up these lines and completely overwhelm. In fact, had Sardoche played G4, look how scary this is. This is a queen trap. Your queen is trapped. Completely. We get H6. Now Lud correctly moves the queen out of the scope and tries to play Queen H5. And Sardoche plays King D7. This is a gangster move. It is the second choice of the computer behind playing this and then doing it. Sardoche plays the top engine recommendation here to just hide the king in the middle. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? Position's closed. Closed position means more pawns. Only opening in the position is the C file. So what? We're going to play rook C8 and we're going to take the C file. King's safe. Crazy. He plays King D7. Lud plays Queen F3. Now we get pawn takes, bishop takes, and bishop G5. Now this isn't correct. This isn't correct because now when the bishop abandons that post, you got to be thinking, all right, obviously I'm not going to take. There's no need for me to take this because then they just open things up. I don't like that. Let me keep trying to make progress. And Ludwig kind of does that by going here, and Sardoche doesn't play a great move. He lets him bring his knight out. Dude, just bring your knight out. Just bring the knight out. And at this point, you don't even have to trade the queen. Just back up because your knight is going to C5. Visualize in the future, what are the best squares? On the only open file in the position for you to control, c5, and c6. Double the rooks and infiltrate. You will notice as this game goes on, and by the way, bishop d2 is not a good move because you're helping your opponent get that. Now, at this point, Sardoche has an absolutely insane idea. He's got to ask himself the exact same thing. He's got to ask himself, where am I going to put my knight? What's the best square for my knight? That's a great square. Bang. Oh, no, I get taken. Damn. All right, well, then I got to go this way. Wait. Work backwards. That's not safe, but that's safe. And that means work backwards. Knight a8, knight b6, and knight c4. A beautiful maneuver which takes place throughout this game. From here on out, it's possible for him to do it. Now here, Ludwig transfers the queen. He shouldn't. He should transfer the knight first, and then, because what happens is, we get rook g8. And all of a sudden, white has to respond to black's threats. He pushes, but that's something known as a hook. A pawn in front of a king that you're trying to defend, which can be targeted. And it does. It gets targeted on the very next move. Look at that. Dynamite strikes. f4. Hits both. Ludwig plays queen f2. Takes. And now, in this position, Sardoche just takes. The problem is he takes his foot off the gas. It's only the loss of a pawn. He could have stayed patient as he did in the last game. Queen h3. And now the rook is the one taking and no one can stop it. The game is over. Rook g3. No one stops it. Stay patient. Look for a second. Also, rook f8 would have been another good move. Just activating another piece. Just adding that layer of pressure. But he takes, and now rook g1, because he doesn't want to allow rook to g2, takes. What does white take with? White's down 1-0 in the match. What does white take with? Knight. Of course. Don't trade the rooks. That will give you a 5-on-4 knight endgame. What are you, insane? Can you not count? King e7. Rook c1. Uh-oh. Knight to e8. Rook c6. Uh-oh. Ludwig on the comeback path. He has located the weakness. He has infiltrated. First to the c-file. He wins the pawn. And then, even though Sardoche is utilizing this, he goes, wait a minute. Why can't I give him a check and sneak around back? Yes. All of a sudden, it's 4-on-3. And this is still the only maneuver for Sardoche. And he plays like this. At this point, Lud kind of adjusting, goes, wait a minute, I can't get in. Runs his king through the other side, and that's it. Black is completely paralyzed. White is dominating by material and piece activity. And black, knight f8, boom. It doesn't even matter. You can play knight f4, and it's basically something called zugzwang, which is when you can't move anything. Anything you move, you're going to lose material. Once that base of operations on e6 falls, Lud picks up the pawn, he wins the next pawn, and Sardoche resigns. Ludwig beats. Is that Ludwig's best win ever? I'm going to go look that up. I mean, honestly, I should have looked that up before I started this, but I'm going to just look that up now because why not? Let's go to Rapid. That was his best win ever. Ludwig, in the middle of a PogChamps semifinal, down 1-0, defeats his highest ever rated opponent in a Rapid game, let it be known. 1-1. We're going to a 5-minute, no bonus time playoff game. If it's a draw, they're going to play again. Ludwig starts with the white pieces. At this point, he plays e4, c5, c3, knight f6, all the same stuff, but with a small wrinkle. He plays pawn takes, and this time bishop to c4. But then he forgets to play bishop back to b3. He has to play bishop b3. In the game, he plays bishop b5 and makes the trade. But he's still doing very well. Castles very quickly. Plays the bishop to g5, rook e1. And Sardoche doesn't just castle. He doesn't just finish and castle. Your opponent is threatening something. He can take. Visualize what they can take. And when he takes, bang and bang. So Sardoche notices that in a 5-minute game, centralizes his knight. Now what Ludwig should do here, get that knight out. Develop your final piece, get that knight out. Well, what he plays is he plays queen d2, not a bad move. Trying to go bang, bang, bang. We get d e5. And here, he plays knight takes, thinking about going to c6. It would have been better to take with the pawn, but he takes with the knight. And Sardoche, not thinking about castling, not thinking about defending his pawn, thinks for about 20 seconds and plays the move f6. Uh-oh, it's a fork. Ludwig goes here, hitting the queen, but queen d7, and now there's two hanging pieces. Now at this point, you start to hit the panic button. You're like, oh my god, Let's go to danger levels. Bishop h6 is the best move for white because you got to take because the bishop's hanging. Bang, bang, and now we're going to sneak into g7. Now black has only one move. This. Stay passive. Queen h7. White has picked up 2 pawns. For the bishop, it's not great, but it isn't losing just yet. It's still a game. And now, Ludwig thought he had a trick. He played queen e2 and said, take my knight, because he thought it was mate. Sardoche played this, and Ludwig still thought that he had this. Forgot about the backwards knight. He hit the full panic button. He should have just went back. Go back. But he hit the full panic button. But, and once again, it's the third mistake that killed Ludwig. It wasn't the first one. The first one made him hit the panic button, but the second one he had to compose himself. But he couldn't. He couldn't compose himself. And instead of just playing a move like queen to d2, like this, forcing Sardoche to find bishop to e6, he trades. That's not what you want to do. Because Sardoche, even though he's down about 2 minutes to 240 at this point, he's able to stabilize knight c3, bishop takes d4, knight d5, attacking this and threatening knight to c7. And there's only one way to stop that. And the man is, a high-rated player for a reason. Don't be fooled by this 1000 stuff. That's their blitz rating. Plays rook a7. Beautiful move. Obscure defensive move, guarding everything. Ludwig plays rook d1. Sardoche picks up a pawn for good measure. Brings the bishop to its safest square, avoiding all blunders. Avoiding all blunders. Bishop f8. It's ugly. You don't want to do it. It looks like you're setting up for the next game. But it's necessary. And it's the damn best move. And then he brings the king out. And he activates his next piece, losing a pawn in the process. But there's nothing Ludwig can do anymore. He's been completely repelled. And now Sardoche says, all that for a drop of blood? Knight to d5, rook to e7. Look at that move. Hitting both, making one of them get traded, and he just cleans it up. Ludwig had to work extra hard to win that last game, and it showed you the level that he is at. He beat that man. He beat this guy who overcame an opening disadvantage, a 1-minute time deficit, and that full belligerent attack of rooks, queen, and knight, saw through everything, found the clutch defensive idea, and by the end of the game, he overtook Ludwig on the clock as well. He wins, and he is the first finalist of PogChamps 3. He awaits Benji Fishy versus Rainn Wilson, which happens tomorrow. I will be calling the action along with Alexandra Botez. We might see Benji versus Sardoche, the rematch for the finals. My friends, the match literally just ended. I was watching it the whole time. I was sitting in my room. I am amped up. I know you can tell. Oh my goodness, this was an unbelievable match. Hopefully there were so many takeaways, opening battles, back and forth, adapting to the opening, depending move by move, how it's going, visualizing your opponent's threats, how to come back from a losing position by both players, tactical opportunities missed, and how to spot them better in the future. This is everything chess is all about, baby. I'll see you in the next recap.